as well. Um, so it bit of background. You would have heard me regularly talk about the cadets and my history as the in the cadets many years ago, and the fact that I joined the cadets, and I don't think anybody else was in the cadets from an ethnic point of view. Sort of
Mm.
34 years ago.
Yeah. The only brown man in the cadets at that time.
Yeah. And we lived at High Hinja,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to get the number 1 bus. And do you know the number 1 bus?
Yeah, yeah. I was always curious about where it went, the number one, because we would see it on the school runs, the number one.
Yeah. So the number 1, pretty much, um, and it probably reflects the number of the bus, right? Because if you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
number 1 bus, right? The numbers must have had some relevance at some time.
Mm.
If you think about it,
Mm.
right? So number 1 bus, the first bus, and it pretty much takes you through every single part of Newcastle.
Mm-hmm.
Is what it does.
And do you think it's not? It wasn't the first bus, though, was it? The first route.
Why?
I don't. Well, it may have been. We don't. We just don't know. It'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be.
Mm.
And I genuinely believe that it, it well, it was called the number 1 for a reason.
Mm.
So let's do a bit of history. Anyway, I used to get on this bus, right, and it took for a bus journey. I think it took like hour and a half maybe
Mm-hmm.
to get from High Heaton. So it um, was it Benfield Road or the road where the old university campus is? Anyway, it terminates there, the number 1 bus. So next to 4 lane ends, and some of it went on. Anyway, I used to get there and go through all of town. And it went through Walker, it went through the city centre, goes through Bite, went into town, and then went up Elsick into Scotswood, and then ultimately across into Slatyford, which is where the cadet campus was.
Mm.
And this bus, yeah, it went through both the most affluent places
Mm.
as well as the most deprived.
Mm-hmm.
And in those black and white days, Scotswood was like a war zone.
Mm.
Right? And I used to be sat on this bus in a uniform
Yeah.
because I was like 14, 15.
Mm.
Obviously, I'd be sat on the top deck.
Yeah.
And obviously, people would get up on it and they'd go, "Yeah, Baggy, what are
Yeah.
you wearing a uniform for? Like, who the do you think you are? Like," and I'd,
You'd feel that tension, right? As soon as you think, "Oh my God, who's going to come upstairs?" and is it going to lead to a situation?
well, it was always a situation. It was always, as in it just became the norm. And so many a time you'd try and ignore, and then you couldn't, and then you'd open your mouth, and then you'd end up in a tussle, and all of those things. Anyway, right? Um, you'd then think, why did I continue? As in, well, why did I sit upstairs? But anyway, because you just did. You know, it
Mm.
wasn't cool to sit downstairs.
Yeah, well,
Um,
downstairs was for the grannies in the shopping bags, wasn't it?
it was, yeah, and you'd always have to give up your seat.
Mm.
So in them days, you did. It's funny, isn't it? No one gives up their seats now. I
Yeah,
find that horrific. I find that
we
horrific.
become very
Um,
polite.
yeah. So we we I used to get there and used to do drill. So you used to practice marching. And it was like left, right, yeah, by the left, turn. And you know, you'd have to literally, you know, how you marched, how you paraded, how you stood, and I loved it.
Mhm.
I really, really enjoyed it, and you know, continued it for a bit. And some of the opportunities, the people there, we went away on weekends and things like that, stuff that I'd never get the chance to do in my life.
Uh-huh.
And um, anyway, the point was, and the point is, I absolutely, you know, it was one of the best experiences of my life. And the reason why I've mentioned all of that is because it also taught me or reinforced, you know, as Asian people, Jack, we're naturally respectful. We're naturally like sort of we have discipline. We're naturally, you know, it's in our DNA to do all of these things. But you know, that's within the Asian historic environment. It's changed, obviously, or it's changing. But
Changed a bit, but no. For example, I'm making reference to people as uncle and brothers and ABC
yeah,
and D. Respecting the age thing, whether you call them, you know, something like Giri G, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and
Everyone was G and uncle and
yeah, and there's that
aunties.
bit of dynamism there and on how you meet and greet elders. So it's all about respect.
Yeah. And anyway, you know, that whole experience um, was um, that experience was um, it informed. It left an incredible impression on me, and one of the best experiences at that time. My regret was I didn't continue with it, um,
Hmm.
but it was a great experience. And wearing
Mm.
that uniform, Jaff,
Uh-huh.
you know, at that time, I fitted in, and
Yeah.
fitting in was a big deal at the time. If you think about it, as we were growing up, you just wanted to be accepted and normal. And you know, I mean, when I was there, I wasn't just a packy.
Hmm.
You know, I was a cadet. I
Yeah.
was, you know, part of a team. I was part of a community. All of these. Anyway, so that was that. And you know, thinking back, Jaff, the uniform, I felt so comfortable in that uniform
Mm.
that I think it was round about that time, if I'm you know reminiscing, that I then went on to starting wearing suits. 'Cause I started wearing suits when I was like 15, 16.
Mm.
You know, I had my uniform, but then I went and bought a suit. And I mentioned buying a suit from Burton's and things like that. And ever since, I've always worn a suit. And and then you know, when Top Shop, this Top Shop was yeah, that was the place to be. Um, anyway, anyway, over the last 5, 6 years, right, I've always had an affinity. I've always respected our armed forces. Um, but over the last 5, 6 years, I've got really involved, and you know, Andy Black, really good friend. We've developed a relationship, and it was interesting, Jeff. So um, we launched virtual and mass armed forces covenant. I'd come up with this idea of getting a dozen companies in a room all together, get them to sign the Armed Forces Covenant, a voluntary pledge. You've done it, you know, and that was sort of 2.5, 3 years ago. And in that time, we've had now just in the northeast, we've had 500 businesses and organizations sign up. You know, that's one of the things. I've launched the cadet apprenticeship pathway, and about 3 years ago, possibly four, uh, I hosted an event at the Northern Counties and an army event, you know, with lots of people. And there's a video of me online actually that Doc Anand shot, and I talked about, you know, with real passion and pride, my experience in the cadets. And then about 3 months ago, I got um, a, 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 a call relatively out the blue from um, the army to come to Gateshead, and we were still sort of in lockdown at the time, and I was like, all right, this is interesting, but you know, I went along, obviously through followed regulation and all of those sort of things, and I was sat there, and I went to Napier House, and it's the 101 Regiment, which is the Royal Artillery, and which was the cadets that I was in, and the colonel there sort of sat us down. He says, "Look, Ammar, you know, I'm going to cut to the chase. Um, I'd like you to consider being our honorary colonel." And I was like, "All right. Um, what does it mean? What does it entail?" Type of thing. As is, but actually, it was probably one of those questions when somebody asks you that you don't have to think about. You just go, "Yeah, I'd love to," type of thing. Um, and and he says, "Right, well, before I start asking and getting that approved and everything else," he says, "the Queen has to approve it. So
Wow.
as long as you haven't upset the Queen,
Yeah, yeah.
then you should be all right." I says, "Oh, well, you know," I said, actually, I'm probably our number one fan in the North.
These were
Um,
the
you know, is the thing. So this regiment is called the Northern Gunners, Jeff.
right.
It's a reserve regiment, and they're responsible for the multi-launch rocket system. So they are one of the only reservists with one of the foremost armory. It is an
Mm,
incredible bit of kit, right? But it's got one of the biggest histories, longest histories. It started off in Tynemouth, and there was
right.
volunteers in 1850 who came together and started, you know, supporting the armed forces, and they fought all over the world, and they were called the Geordie Gunners, is what they were. And then they amalgamated, and they've got now, they're in Blyth, Tynemouth, Kingston Park, South Shields, and in Leeds. And the headquarters is in Gateshead. And anyway, it's the first time that they've ever had an honorary colonel, this regiment, outside of the armed forces. So, um, you know, the current honorary colonel's a brigadier, David Harrington, great guy, but everybody's been a senior officer or a senior figure in the army. So when the colonel said to us, he says, "Look, Ammar, I know it's not going to be easy, but what we need is someone local. We need someone passionate. We need someone with a connection, and we need someone who can, you know, sort of represent us locally." And I says, "Well, that's me. You know, is what it is." And and then it went through an approval process. The MOD had to approve it, and then last week they said, "Right, it's all been approved at the MOD. It's gone to Her Majesty. This will probably take a few months." And anyway, it was approved within less than a week by Her Majesty. So I got a call on Tuesday morning saying, "I'm delighted to advise you that Her Majesty has appointed you her honorary colonel of the 101 regiment." So I'm going in a couple of weeks
Um,
to get my uniform. So get a
look,
uniform.
all uniformed up and stuff, man. Do you have the badges and everything?
Yeah.
Oh, how cool.
So I'm thrilled. I'm buzzing. it's incredible. And this week is Armed Forces Week, Jeff.
Yeah.
So, to get appointed. On Saturday, I was fortunate to go down to Catterick and see all of the regiment on exercise. They had all of the army. They had all of the fighting. They were in doing close hand combat. They were climbing through windows. They were, it was fantastic to see. So I spent all of the day there with them, and it was incredible. And it's so I just I feel our armed forces do so much, and if I can play a little part in supporting and promoting them, and encouraging other people to connect, because lots of people just don't know what they don't know. But yeah, I'm the first external honorary colonel of this regiment. I mean, give you an idea, other honorary colonels, all the royal family are honorary colonels of different regiments. Bear Grylls is the honorary colonel of the commandos. So it's like it's a big deal. And as I say, it's you get appointed by Her Majesty the Queen. So
would it have been much easier for Her Majesty to have given you the green light because of the CBE and stuff, because the history is already there, right? So you don't need to go through months of checks and A, B, C, and D, because that due diligence is already in place, and that particular title is already there, isn't it? So I'm assuming
yeah,
that would.
of course it is. And I think it's thank you for all you do. Sorry, I'm just as I say, trying to multitask, which I'm rubbish at doing. Of course, it'll make a big difference, or it'll make that difference. But a CBE, whilst is an appointment by the Queen, and of course, I'm a commander of the British Empire on her behalf. And the process for that is primarily through the um, the cabinet office. So they do the vast majority of background and approvals and things like that, and the Queen signs it off. The military honorary colonel approvals go directly to the Queen, and she has a dedicated, sort of department within her Buckingham Palace. So anyway, fantastic. Another first stuff is what it is.
Great news.
Yeah. I think we're going to get some adverts. I don't know. We need to prepare for them, just on the safe side for our listeners and viewers. They may not happen because the show is extra special. Yeah, Jeff, that was a huge highlight for me, clearly.
And it should be. Right,
Excuse me, from a personal point of view, as I've mentioned, I'm slightly challenged this week. My routine has been kicked out because of this this plague that I'm suffering from, and you just feel really odd because you've never. I don't know about you, but I've certainly not encountered it other than a heart attack that I had in November. And I've not had anything contagious, so to speak. So when you catch something like this, it's it's quite challenging.
What, just bad flu, Ammar, basically, is it?
Well, it's it sort of started in the as a cold, and then it just sort of more virally type of infection type thing. So like cough, phlegm type of stuff. I mean, touch wood, no problems with breathing or anything like that. I've been checking my blood oxygen levels and all of those things, they're perfectly normal. Um, it's just it's more heady and nasally, is
Mm.
what it is.
Probably a combination of, it's not a combination of the hay fever season and maybe it's a bit of a flu at the same time, which is compounding the kind of symptoms a little bit more.
Yeah, well, the honest answer is I don't know.
Mm.
And and it hasn't prevented me from working, so to speak.
Mm.
I've been at work. I've delivered workshops. I've continued to do everything that I've needed and wanted to do. The well, I say wanted. So I haven't. I've only worked out 2 out of 5 days, and even those workouts were limited.
Mhm.
I haven't got up at 4:30. So I have, so the earliest I've got up is like 6, which is horrific for me.
Mm.
Um, so that's knocked. And then I've been rather short, impatient, like at home, because you're just like, oh, you don't feel right. So when people want your attention or all of those type of things, it's like, what do you do? So it's, yeah, it's been interesting, is what it is. Um, so yeah, I just haven't felt on top of my game, um, and it just then knocks you for everything else, is what
Mm.
it does.
It does. But I think your clients, team, I think they need to have that. I guess they want have that understanding
Yeah.
because ultimately, you still got to deliver a service because they don't really care on what's happening behind the scenes. They still want that delivery of service and everything else that comes with being in business because unfortunately there is no respite and that's the challenge, isn't it, Ammar?
Oh,
Because
undoubtedly, Jack.
everything
Is
needs to just continue regardless of the engine, how the engine is and whether
yeah,
the engine had a setback or not. I think the journey, the business journey kind of continues and the product offering needs to kind of be consistent. I don't know if you have any more sympathy in your business as to what we would have in hospitality, because in hospitality, regardless of whatever the situation is, you have to, guests have to come in and have that experience without there being any flaws or anything wrong behind the scenes. It's not something that they're really privy to, or they would kind of, well, they wouldn't really understand in some ways. And you would have to, you wouldn't go to John Lewis and there's you would expect there to be a flawless kind of experience,
yeah,
and you don't realize, oh, well, hold on, there are humans that have to make this happen. It's, for example, one day I said to the guy in the bank, hey, I said, hold on, why is my money not in the bank the next day?
yeah,
He said, you do know it needs to get processed by humans. And I was like, what, really? You know, he said, so there may have been some kind of a discrepancy on that one, or there might have been something that wasn't right, or maybe it's a bank, I don't know. So it was quite interesting. It was quite an interesting answer because you think everything is just so automated and
yeah.
it's that technology is handling everything and you're going to get whatever you're set out to get, and regardless of illnesses or setbacks and A, B, C, and D, because you just don't take those into consideration.
Um, Without a doubt, and that is part of that challenge, isn't it?
Mm.
Is the fact that we're all dependent upon um, that we're all dependent upon, excuse me, um, human intervention and still reliant. So even though we're living in this digital world, um, the like this week, I had 3 workshops to deliver. So I was, so it was a case of there's an expectation that you still need to deliver the workshops.
Mm.
The businesses are still attending the workshops. You have to prepare for the workshops. You still have to then follow up on the workshops. So it's yeah, it's quite interesting that um, as business owners, the business is still reliant
Mm,
on you,
yeah.
and using that engine analogy, it's uh, it's quite interesting because people aren't bothered what's under the bonnet. They just
Mm,
want you to take them from there to there,
yeah.
is what they want and need you to do. Um, so, yeah, apologies if I've got a bit of a croaky voice, so I'm slightly hesitant. I think my head's working all right. As in, I don't feel as if I've been unable to think. Probably my reactions are slightly delayed, um, is what they are. So anyway, let's. What's happening with the football, Jeff?
Well, it's a big game, isn't it, Ammar? England, Germany, Euros. So so that's it had to be Germany, didn't it? With all that rivalry over the years and everything happening in kind of, you know, oh, was it Euro '96? Oh my goodness. So yeah, that's on. That's going to be a big game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean beyond that, I think Newcastle United. Um, I think everything's just in limbo still, isn't it? Was just wondering. I think it's sometime in July. They said that there might be some kind of a outcome on this court case, and let's just hope that Mike Ashley wins it on this occasion, and let's hope that the Saudis do take over because this has been dragging on for so long, and it's just so unjust and ridiculous that the Premier League's taking this position, influenced by the top six. I think, I just can't believe how the MPs can't intervene in this one because it's going to change an entire region of the country. You're talking an entire region, and why on earth would the government not make it happen? I just don't get it. The Premier League's been naughty. Government could put their foot down and make it happen. They do business with the Saudis on a regular basis. For them, the Premier League now to say that they're not passing a director's test, it's just bloody outrageous. I mean, how can you even say that about King bin Salman when the British government have been doing business with the Saudis for over 100 years and billions and billions and billions of pounds of it?
Yeah.
So it's illogical. I think you do business for the betterment of the country. You do business here for the betterment of a region.
Yeah, it
And if
shouldn't be politically, should it? As in, it shouldn't be.
look, everything is. I mean, it is all political because what's the difference between Sheikh Mansour and bin Salman? I mean, they're saying that bin Salman didn't pass a director's test or something along those lines. It's not as simple as that, but effectively that's what they're trying to say. So it's just all ludicrous. I mean, the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, bin Salman, I'm sorry, Sheikh Mansour, that country owns Man City Football Club. And if Saudi owns Newcastle, so what? It's the same difference. It's absolutely the same difference. And you go into all these little minute intricate details and finding ways of not allowing it to happen. But if you imagine them all, look at it slightly different. Look, if you imagine that it has happened, can you imagine Newcastle as a city?
Oh,
It would be just unbelievable. The amount of people that would come and visit Newcastle, the big deal that would begin to happen. You're talking millions and billions and billions of pounds coming into the city.
yeah.
And the amount of people are coming into the city, because if that is the Saudis football club and they're promoting that in Riyadh and all those other countries in Saudi, and they're bringing, for example, this big fight between Joshua and what's he called, man? The fight that's happening in Saudi at the moment. Saudi's the only country that could put it on, that could only afford it.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
imagine if
money, isn't it? It comes down to money. It's funny though, because it used to be Las Vegas, didn't it? Everything was
Las Vegas can't take on the Saudis. So if you imagine that Newcastle United is their arm in the UK, so why would that fight not be in St James's Park?
Hmm.
Do you understand, Ammar? Like that kind of a situation, the world's media rocking up to Newcastle upon Tyne. all the restaurants, all the bars, all the hotels, totally completely rammed, and it's full of like famous faces. And, you know, all the superstars come to the city when they visit, or come, you know, like Beyonce comes to London. They'll be like, oh yeah, the Saudis invite them to Newcastle, come and watch our football. You know, it'd be so different, and that's not beyond all the other economic investments that's going to go in from other properties and A, B, C, and D. So that's the big thing for our city, and I don't know. Let's hope somehow that they push it through and it happens, and then we get what we deserve as a city.
And when will that happen? Yeah.
I think in July, I reckon within the next 4 to 5 weeks, there's going to be an announcement either way.
And what do you think that will say?
I mean, look, the people that are involved, it is the Messi of the barrister world. So hopefully he's got, like, his track record's unbelievable. So he's never lost anything. So hopefully he pushes it through and it's a positive result. And if it does, then they'll have 2 weeks to, couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks to get all the new players in, and you know, really change what Newcastle United is all about.
Let's see. And then what's your forecast for Germany and Angleterre?
I think, obviously, I really hope that England can somehow do it, but I always fear the Germans, because historically they've always had one upon us, whether it be like this, you know, it's just historical, isn't it? But maybe might be able to change history on this occasion. I don't know, Ammar. I think in my heart, obviously, you want England to do the business, but I am nervous about Germany.
Yeah.
I think the Germans will go through somehow, because they just do, don't they? All the time, they bloody get one over us.
No, it's time we change that.
If it goes to penalties, that's it, game over.
Well, yeah, let's see. I mean, it has been a slightly disappointing. I mean, the Scotland-England game was just shocking. It was. I don't know how much of it you watched or not, but it was.
Struggling to watch football at the moment.
It was poor, is what it was.
Mm.
And what about the business and city centre, Jalf? How's it going?
Yeah, it's busy, Ammar. The city centre is busy. I mean, we're very busy. I think it's just the same issues with the staffing. You've got these new apps in place, and everyone's like, oh, well, my app said that I have to be at home for the next 10 days. And, you know, there's so much of that going on at the moment.
Yeah.
The track and trace app. So it's so disruptive with the team, and that's the biggest challenge, though.
I agree. I mean, I got a message from one of my team saying, "Oh, the people I was with on Monday have COVID, and I haven't got it, but and I've had one of those home test things, but I'm going to go in for a proper test. What do you want us to do?" And it's like, I'm not going to tell you to come to work. You know, I can't afford for that to happen. But the challenge as a business is immediately when you're, you know, you've got a relatively small team, or a team that you never have people sat around not doing anything, do you? In business. Otherwise,
Well, if
you don't need them.
well, exactly, that's my logic, and it would be so inefficient. If you're sitting here twiddling your thumbs, that means you don't need to be there.
And as a consequence, when somebody is legitimately unwell, you know, you go, right, you're not well, makes sense, and we'll deal with it. But when they're not well, so when they're well, but they go, but by the way, computer says no, then you have to deal with that. We have to accept it. It is the way things are. But from a business perspective and a planning and a delivery point of view, it makes it very, very challenging. And when you start thinking about the different aspects of business and going back to us as founders not being able to really take time off or affect the journey or the experience of our customers, that then compounds it, doesn't it?
Definitely.
And actually, I mean, the other challenge that I had is equally, I've got another core key member of staff on holiday. So all of a sudden, you go, there's a holiday, there's a person not coming
Yeah.
in, there's
Yeah.
that, there's all of this additional work, there's all of these deadlines, there's all of these activities. Um, they, as you say,
And all of a sudden, you're like down by like 5-6 people, and they think, "Oh my god, what's happened to my workforce?"
And in your sector, Jalf, because it's particularly impacted, isn't it? Leisure and hospitality. From a skills point of view, what type of challenges are you really experiencing in recruitment and resourcing?
Number one, I think for us, we've got a particular culture that everyone needs to come and fit into. And that is the number one factor. So you've got to come into fit into a culture, which is you need to have a very, very strong work ethic. You need to be disciplined. You need to be focused. You need to have a willingness to learn and develop. Now, that is actually too much for certain people. We're finding this, and that look, mentally, it's too difficult for me to follow this detail, and we just can't keep them, because if you can't follow the detail that we need, that is fundamental to what we're all about, then that they can't even go through the basic. They a lot of people have said that, look, putting all these tables aligned and doing this is just, I don't have the mental strength to do it. So I think that I think that this is what I'm just noticing, the younger generation, and I'm not speaking for every single one of them, because we've had a new 17-year-old started and she's just amazing, but we find most of them, they can't handle the pressure. They're not built in the same level of kind of I don't know, the mental strength is not there in the workplace, the work ethic is not there. So those are the things that we're finding issues with. And the groups that do have this more naturally, whether it be those from the Asian subcontinent, because we're still hungry people, we've got that hungry instilled within our souls. That group, obviously, they've moved on though into professional jobs, and they're not wanting to kind of work in restaurants and bars and A, B, C, and D. Then you have the Eastern Europeans, which was kind of a big part of our kind of workforce, and because of Brexit, they're not around. So you're left with, at the moment, I think our recruitment, we notice the applicants is based on the phase that we're in. So, for example, a couple of months ago, when the Indians were allowed to come into the city, the Indian students, the lots and lots of CVs came in from the Indian students, and that became who we recruited because of the sheer number of CVs that were coming in from that particular group of people. And right now, because school is finishing, and you got the smart kids that want to earn some money for the next 6 weeks, all of those CVs are coming in. So I think in terms of, it just depends on what periods based on the CVs, but generally hospitality individuals you have very little of. I mean, I have our restaurant manager, general manager, she's like amazing. She was in Marriott for 11 years, and she is kind of baffled by so many things that she's witnessing in the UK. I mean, in Dubai, if you want to, she said, she said, I can't believe that people don't come to interviews. In Dubai, they would never miss an interview. In Dubai, if you're sick, there's no way you can just call your work and say, I'm sick. You need to be able to go to the doctor. The doctor needs to see you. The doctor needs to give you a doctor's note. And only when you're assured that all of these things are going to happen, as a default, you would have to provide your doctor's note before you can even go to your employer and say that, look, I need to miss a day. And that's on, they're getting paid 20 quid a day. or whatever, or 10 quid a day, or 20 quid a day. And the discipline and the mentality is so different because hospitality is a closed shop, Ammar. You have like lots of professionals. I don't think we have that many professionals applying for jobs at this moment in time. So you're just left with the groups that I've mentioned.
And that's part of the challenge, and it's a generational shift, isn't it, Jeff? As in
Yeah.
to fix this. I don't know, when I say fix it, is it not also a case of support of the challenges? Is that historically leisure and hospitality have been identified as low level, low skill type jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and low paid? And
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the low paid situation because it depends on what position you're fulfilling.
yeah,
If you're a chef, you're highly paid. I mean, the minimum wage, Ammar, you're talking, it's like if you're 25 years old, you're gonna get 81 or something like that. You add a tip onto that, which is let's say roughly £1 an hour. So you're nearly getting £10 an hour. Now, come on, that's not bad. Getting £10 an hour. You work, you know, 9 hours a day, 8 hours a day. You're getting 80 quid a day, as opposed to what a joiner who gets like 120 quid a day. And that's a joiner has to be seriously skilled to work a tool, but you just have to serve a table and you don't have to know anything.
yeah.
So I think the pay is not that bad anymore. It's just that people have moved on during the hospitality, obviously, because it got hit so badly. People have had career changes and have gone into deliveries and Ubers and this, that, and the other,
Well,
which
that's
gave
that's part of the challenge, isn't it? There's been a disbursement
yeah, yeah,
um, of the workforce.
yeah.
Is
So that's
what it is.
I think there's that, and I think that we feel that we provide a environment where you can learn and develop, but we're looking at it and we feel that people don't actually like that because that gives them more pressure,
Yeah.
which is interesting as well. Because we think that, oh yeah, we're going to come and we're going to develop you so much, we're going to give you a platform to learn, but people are saying they'd rather work in a place where there isn't that many standards because it's much easier for them.
Yeah.
So it's
No,
so
I absolutely get that, and it's part of one of the biggest challenges
mm,
is there, and I know that you've looked after from a wages point of view, um, the your employees, and you have that culture. There's also that kudos of working for you and your restaurants, given the fact that they are so broadly and widely recognised as some of the best there is. Um,
I mean, you think that makes a difference, but it's not making as big of a difference as you would hope. Even the new one, Amar, the journey that we're going to go on, they need to come and believe it. They need to come and believe the journey. And that's what we're trying to get them to understand. And I think I think we need people with some serious ambition in life, in terms of they want to get to the top of their game.
yeah.
And I don't know, I think within the younger generation, I don't know, Emma. I think the ambition, they don't seem to be as like fiery with ambition as what we maybe was in our at
I
their.
think it's a different generation, Jaff. It's there isn't necessarily that need. The ambitions and aspirations have been changed and influenced somewhat by broader, wider careers and opportunities. You can create a career with this thing now. Lots of people
Uh-huh.
are, and people get distracted with that, and that's why what I'm saying is it's a generational thing, and
Mm.
and really, it goes back to where we started the conversation around things like the armed forces, right? So, if for example, Jeff, if I use the armed forces as an opportunity, and just one of the things that I really want to do, I really want to thank our armed forces and relate this to the conversations we're having, because if as a young person you joined the cadets. You'd develop some incredible skills. You'd develop the discipline, the ambition, the aspiration. You want to progress. You get the opportunity to progress and all of those things. You come out of the cadets and you get a job. You're going to turn up on time. You're going to be respectful. You're going to be mindful. You're going to be careful of how you look and how you engage. And all of those things that the armed forces help develop. And those extracurricular opportunities, I would argue that we should encourage every single young person to do that. And that's why when I was saying to you, the generational shift is what it's going to take, because we need to start early on. We need to encourage that ambition and aspiration generally in everybody, so that they can and they do want that hunger's there. I want to do something. I want to be part of something. I want to be part of something the best, rather than this reliance on passive income and passive jobs. Oh, well, I'll just do this. I'll just do that.
Yeah.
Is the thing. So we need to encourage young people. We need to share these stories. You need to share your story. We need to be encouraging future generations more. And the other thing is, Jack, as an adult, right? The other thing that I'm very, very keen to say is because you can join, you can become a reservist in our armed forces, and sign up to go and support and do a few weekends and things like that, develop your skills, you get a uniform, but you get paid for that as well, as an individual. So if you were going to do something, it would be wonderful to see and encourage more younger people and people of all ages who are sat there looking for some direction to give the reservists a go. And I would encourage everybody to consider that. I just think there's so many opportunities, but you have to know about them, and you have to want to know about them and do something. And that's where that ambition and aspiration, that spark, needs to be encouraged as a young person. As in, you were working at a young age. I was working at a young age. We were working because we wanted to work. There was that encouragement to work. We weren't like, oh my God, you're 10, stop working. It was like, get out there. And that, so parents and other influencers need to encourage young people. I had a paper job. I used to deliver the papers, and my elder brother used to get paid for them. So that was an interesting thing. But as in those type of things, we need to encourage more of, don't we?
Absolutely, definitely.
Right, we're coming to the end of the show. You've been listening to Ammar and
Jalf,
live on our weekly show right here on Spice FM, and broadcast live on YouTube and everywhere else. And next week we're going to have one of our awesome women, Anu Cora, coming on. Solicitor. She's an in-house
dedicated Asian and world music radio station. 98.8 FM.
Transport Secretary